different than the price they charged anyone else.
So then, as hedge fund A, if I had somebody sign that and I found out, that
then you could sue them.
You
can sue them for fraud, and you could go to the U.S. attorney, and if it turned out that they faxed you the letter or mailed you the letter, then the U.S. attorney might decide to go after them for wire or mail fraud.
That's why people use couriers in the city so much.
And if it turned out that the broker that earned the commissions then spent his money out of state, you could attempt to talk a U.S. attorney into going after him for money laundering. Any money derived from an illegal activity spent across state lines is laundered money under the money laundering statute. And if there happened to be a pattern of this, if it happened more than one time, I will point out to you, you only need 3 violations for RICO, which is the Racketeering Act. And when you trigger the Racketeering Act, you can seize assets.
I think I need to do a compliance officer ahead.
So, if we want to get into legalities, we could go all the way down the road of what could be done. The problem is the standard of proof in convincing a jury. We live in the United States. Defendants accused of things that cost more than $100 are entitled to a trial by jury. Will this confuse a jury? Absolutely. Will you be likely to get a conviction? Unlikely. So then you will use what's known as prosecutorial discretion, and you'll decide the better part of valor is to get a civil settlement and move on. And you'll notice that's what mostly is going on with Wall Street firms, is they get civil settlements and they move on. The other thing you've got to keep in mind is that the attorneys employed by the government get paid $60,000 to $90,000 a year. Wall Street will use attorneys that are paid $500,000 a year. The attorneys that the government has, they might assign on a really big case 4 or 5. Wall Street will field a team of 200. Who do you think is outmanned and outgunned? And believe me, the prosecutor takes that into account when trying to figure out what to do. Plus, there's a revolving door. Maybe the people that work for the government want to go back to work for those Wall Street firms.
Given this example, sorry to just keep coming with this, but say if you were selling bonds to a buy-side firm, and then you were also selling bonds to a municipality. What if you were giving soft dollar things to the buy-side firm? You're charging the same price, the same notional price for the bonds to buy-side for the municipality.
Mm-hmm. So this is no different than the dealer selling you the car at invoice, but giving you a coupon for the $200 worth of service.
Exactly. So, just you personally, would you feel guilty about doing things like that?
When I was employed on the street doing it? When I was working undercover, or now? Because you get 3 different answers.
All 3. I just out of curiosity.
Well, before I decided there was a problem, I probably would tell you that I could justify it and that there was no problem. While I was undercover, I probably would tell you that I was bouncing around like a sine curve about whether it was okay or not okay, whether it was legal or illegal, whether it was ethical or unethical. And now, it's not right.
So any soft dollar,
Soft dollars is corruption. Plain and simple. It's just another form of bribery. And believe me, I've had trading accounts that were big enough to get soft dollars myself before I gave all my money away. I can assure you, it's corruption. It's absolutely no different than, would you like a really nice Wall Street job? Have a really wonderful lifestyle? And Karen, you like the W, so maybe you should give some thought to this. Become the party planner for any of the big Wall Street firms. I guarantee you will eat very well and never pay for it.
I hate it, girl. You see that very well.
All right? You want a limo ride anywhere? You get one. You need a hotel room someplace? It's no problem. Now you tell me, was that corruption?
I don't think there's anything explicitly illegal about it. Going back again to written law.
Okay, so we know Jeremy's standards. If it isn't explicitly illegal, he's willing to do it, and he's always got the defense of, There's a website that'll tell you which countries don't have extradition treaties, so you can jump on a plane.
It's not much of you to live.
Well, it depends how much money he's got. Yeah.
Did you run into any juncture where you thought that the ethical path was actually running contrary to the legal path? By way of example, if you work for an investment advisor, you discover fraud, you have a responsibility to report that to a regulatory body, whether that be the FBI, SEC, and they come in and enforcement shuts down the investment advisor. Now, if they shut down the investment advisor and it's under fraud, you may be the only person in a position to save the entire nest egg of 100 people that had money there by continuing an investigation over the course of 30 or 40 days, liquidating their accounts, getting them out of this difficult position. But you're also running totally contrary to securities law at that point in time. Did you find yourself in any position where doing the right thing ethically actually starting to run against the law?
For 15 months, I was continuing to commit crimes while I was reporting things to the government. So, yes, I was busy breaking the law for 15 months while I was doing things undercover.
When were you granted immunity at any point in time?
The government did not know my name. It would have been very difficult for them to grant me immunity while I was doing this stuff undercover. I did get granted immunity while I was during the period when I was in the safe house.
So that begs the question then, you mentioned that you really became uneasy after the market dynamics essentially dropped out, the floor of everything dropped out with this pricing of the large...
Well, no. You shouldn't assume that was market dynamics. That was, we were put in a position where we could no longer maintain the charade.
Well, yes, what I'm saying. Well,
Okay.
there was a shift in the market, and the charade's over. You start becoming extremely uneasy with the directives from your superiors, with committees. What compelled you? Was this? Were you looking for absolution? Were you looking for survival? What was driving you down that 15?
All right, I'm now going to point to this thing I've got over here, right, which is a book you can get at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's about $7. Bart can give it to you to do it because he knows the man who wrote it and he doesn't want to listen to the guy's voice in his head. But the choices that man makes there are the choices that you've got. All right, so if you think about it, what can you do? You can just keep doing your job, be loyal. And remember, I was making a 7-figure income. Most people would think I had a great life. I mean, Worth Magazine says I was one of the 25 smartest people on the street. Etc. Your other alternative is to give voice, and that is what I did. For about 2 years, I yelled and screamed like crazy inside the firm. All right? Now, you get 2 more choices, of which Hirschman only writes down 1. You could leave. Now, you could leave and be quiet, so you could exit loyally. You could leave and give voice and exit loudly. And then there's the fourth choice, the unwritten one, that sort of is the one that isn't there, which is you could say, I'm going to change the players, and I'm going to go to some outside authority to intervene. It's not loyal. It is a form of giving voice. I guarantee it causes exit, but it's a much bigger exit than the one we were talking about, because most likely you cannot stay put in the environment you were in. All right? I mean, let's think about it. You all have friends. I presume that no one in this room is a hermit. All right? I thought I had friends. All right? There are exactly 2 people from back then that still speak to me. All right? I thought I had a support network that stopped talking to me. And I can guarantee you, living with a bodyguard is an interesting experience. It's only got one advantage: transportation is not an issue. It's its only advantage. And I guess if you really are the kind who's lonely and bored, there's always someone to talk to. But other than that, having these people around 24/7, when you want to go someplace, having to get permission, it's an experience. Yeah.
So now that it's all over and you've been through this all, and you're lying in your bed at night and it's just you and the quiet.
Well, actually, I have a little 4-pound dog that lies in the bed with me.
Okay. How do you sleep at night?
Very well, except when the dog gets up to go to bed.
Cool.
I mean, that was the whole idea. Yes,
And now, today, you come to classes to speak. What else do you do to augment your income? Or are you allowed to do certain things and not do certain things?
I'm, at this point, not banned from doing anything. I used to have a couple of software companies. I write books. I teach. I have a real estate business. I haven't had a real honest job since I left. What do you make do?
In terms of the question of trust, in these type of situations, people start to sometimes distrust themselves, the people around them. Do you ever at some point in time try to seek someone out within your situation that you trusted, that you wanted to work with, to a solution? Was there anyone that was integral to it, other than, it sounds like, your ex-wife, or was there absolutely no opportunity?
I understand you were given some advice last week, and I'm going to echo the same advice. When you're committing a crime, do it alone. All right? In the culture that I was in, deciding to be a whistleblower was the equivalent of committing a crime. It's the flip side. That's why they call it ratting. And you better do it alone. I mean, your spouse usually is stuck in the rat trap with you. But, you know, as we've seen a lot on TV and in modern life, that isn't necessarily a safe choice either. So the answer is, if you're prepared to be hung, trust somebody. Otherwise, you better find people that have exactly the same incentive that you do. So, you know, with the first 8 months or so, I had a personal attorney I talked to who was nowhere near Wall Street and therefore couldn't care less. Notice that I said that correctly, could not care less. Okay. When I finally found out about the Whistleblower Act, I hired people that were whistleblower attorneys. Now their incentive was seeing it all the way through to the end because that was the only way they were going to get paid. And in fact, the more that we did, the more money they had to lay out, just like I had to lay out money. So they had the same incentives I did. And in fact, actually at the very end, their incentives and mine differed. And they were willing to let the government settle for an amount that I did not want the government to settle for. But I was overruled.
Paints a pretty bleak picture of people.
Well, I'll give you a clue of the magnitude difference. When I had control of the settlements, we did a separate, LAMTA and I sued Lazard separately. And when we had control of the settlements, we got $3.42 for every dollar of damage. When the U.S. government settled, they got 17 cents for every dollar of damage. Slightly different. But that's because the prosecutors were worn out by losing the criminal cases and gave up. You've got a look on your face that says you want to ask something.
No. All of this sort of overwhelms me.
Karen?
You have to do it all over again. At what point would you have exited, blown the whistle, got out? You know, immediately when you went in there and kind of said, you know, this isn't right, would you have left? What would you have done?
Well, the hindsight being 2020, I like my life. So the reality is I would have blown the whistle 6 months sooner because it wouldn't have changed the life I'm presently leading.
But you still would have done it the entire time.
I like my life. We cannot change who we are other than having been the product of our own history. So if I didn't like my life, I might go back and tell you that I would have changed X or changed Y or changed Z. But I like my life. So the only thing I can tell you I would have done different is I could have blown the whistle 6 months sooner. It would have all played out the same way, except Uncle Sam would have saved $200 million. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a two-part question.
Yeah.
First, how much of this do you think sort of happened because of your age and your inexperience? I mean, obviously you were intelligent, but getting put into a position of power, and you have a lot of mechanisms at your fingers that you can turn and work with. And second, knowing that you entered it and you exited, would you even enter it now at this point and leave it to somebody else to decide to blow the whistle and sort of save yourself from the whole harm? Or do you still feel it's sort of your civil duty, having been given the chance, that you would go through it again in order to blow the whistle?
All right, the answer to the first part of the question is, remember, my firm wasn't the only firm doing it.
Right.
Everybody on the street did it. We had 85 firms as defendants. All right, the scandal accounted for 150% of the profits of all of the public finance departments on the street for the 5 years in question. We had an entire industry that was only employing people because they were committing fraud. And the evidence of that was 3,500 people lost their jobs when I blew the whistle.
Which is why I asked the second question. Whether knowing that you would have to blow the whistle again, would you enter that situation?
Well, again, you see, I can't answer the question that way, because you can only answer the question from the perspective of, do you want to end up in the same place where you are? And I like my life, so I would do it again. You can't answer the question the other way. If you don't like your life,
consider an alternative life.
right. If you don't like your life, so therefore you want to consider alternatives, then you might sit there and play out what the other things might be.
But I imagine there's a certain hardship that comes from having to go through this situation and blowing the whistle and knowing that, yes, you
What
may
doesn't kill us makes us stronger. It's the same process as annealing steel in order to make a harder grade of stainless. Was there agony along the way? Look, I had multiple nervous breakdowns. I had multiple suicide attempts. I had a divorce I wish I didn't have to go through. Would I still do it all again? Yes. Just because things are hard along the way, as long as you're happy with the outcome, the only way you get to the outcome is having been through all the garbage along the way. So it's hard to look back when you're content and say, no, it should be different. It's when you're not content that you can look back and say, well, there's other forks in the road. Yeah.
Would you do it all again if all your assets were seized, you were left with no money, you didn't get anything from the whistleblower settlement?
No. That's an easy question to answer. Not enough change to make that worthwhile. Robert?
Is there anything you see right now in some of you mentioned that you were in some software companies and you were in real estate now. Is there anything, there's certainly unethical things that go on in some of those industries, and I was just wondering, did anything of those things bother you, or is it like?
Well, I've been the victim of unethical things in the software stuff.
Were you an investor, or did you start a company and have investors?
Both. And I had people embezzle from me. I had people commit fraud. I have learned that I'm not necessarily the right person to have as the guiding entrepreneur. I may have good ideas, but even I, having been through all of this other experience, ended up being too trusting. And cost me millions of bucks as a result. So, even I haven't come out jaded enough so that I could prevent that. You're looking at me very puzzled.
No. Well, you don't have your top button when your tie is bothering you, but other than that.
Fine. I can't afford shirts that actually have the right size collar. So.
I have something. I'm a glasses half full kind of girl, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, oh my gosh, we're about to send some of my classmates out into this world, and there has to be, to sort of end things on a positive note. Like, sweet Karen and Bradford and whoever else is going into this world, what can you say positive about it? And that it can't all be like this.
It's the most efficient capital markets in the world that gives entrepreneurs a chance to really make money.
There are many people involved in this environment that have good intentions and have figured out how to compartmentalize the good parts of themselves and don't deal with the other compartment when they're at work. And in fact...
I don't know if that's the answer I was thinking.
And the best best advice that I can give you out of this is to keep in mind that the environment will suck you in, will cause you not to question unless you take the effort to keep asking the questions and engage in the internal dialogue. And most of the ethical problems will not be a stark choice of, do I steal something or not? It's a far more gradual, slippery slope. And I'll give you a simple example that'll illustrate the slippery slope. Let's assume, because I see a number of coffee and soft drinks and stuff, etc. Let's assume that there was an honor bar outside. And it had coffee and soft drinks. All right, how many of you have not had money in your pocket and taken something to eat or drink on the intention of putting some money back in when you pass by after you get the money?
That putting an IOU.
Yeah,
I do that.
Well, I always put the money back.
Uh-huh, sure. And what if you forget to put the money back?
I don't know, I never forgot to put the money back.
All right, so we've already started down the gradual slope. Now let's assume that you drove to work, to school, and there were parking meters outside that had to be fed. Right? Because this is true at Yale, and you have to go feed the parking meters. And you show up at work and you are at school, and you've only got 20s in your wallet, because bank machines nowadays only give you $20 bills. And the parking meter does not take a 20, and it's a $65 ticket if your car gets ticketed. Do you run into the honor bar and grab a couple of quarters till you can go get some change? You don't. How many people do?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You just pay it back.
And just pay it. What if you forget?
You don't, though, because there's a mechanism, there's a camera there, whether it's working or not, that makes sure that you go. Make sure
So now we're into the Jeremy thing of going to get caught. And if it's an explicit violation of the law.
I just said it, it's a law. Because you didn't mention when you talked about the municipal bond, you actually had to sign something that said, that's breaking the law.
I see. So therefore, it's okay to be unethical, but the minute that it says illegal, that's where you draw your line.
Yes.
It's already to make money. It's already to make money. It's not against the law.
Are you guys kidding? I mean, you guys are all lying to yourself. Like, you know what? Like,
I don't think that's the case.
I don't know.
I agree with Jeremy.
You guys work in investment banking, guaranteed you guys will go to a research analyst and be like, hey, you know, we're thinking about doing a deal with this company, you know, you might want to kind of look at maybe bump up, you know, recommendations. I'm sure that, like, if a VP or an MD tells you guys to do that, you guys are probably going to go do it.
JD?
When does, you're talking about honor bar and making decisions like this, when the world is completely black and white, when does it become a position where you can no longer make decisions? Because the clothes we wear, there's a lot of stuff we shouldn't buy. I shouldn't be wearing a Gore-Tex jacket.
Why?
Ethically, it's a disaster. The process for creating Gore-Tex, which is amazing because, you know, most people that are real into the outdoors and love the outdoors, Gore-Tex is something we have to have. The process that's used to create Gore-Tex pollutes incredibly.
But hang on, so do you believe that if you didn't buy that one jacket, that it would actually cause any less pollution?
Well, do you believe that if you didn't borrow 50 cents from the honor bar, that it would make a big deal?
I didn't say that.
I mean,
I don't think that's the ethical question.
Well, I don't understand. How's it not the same
One
question?
is, how's it not the same question?
Yeah.
The jacket already exists. Whether or not you buy it has some fourth or fifth order effect about whether they ever make another one sometime down the line. It actually has nothing to do with how much Gore-Tex is made, etc. Your one individual decision won't affect that decision. Your one individual decision about whether or not to take the 50 cents and pay it back does affect you.
Well, but to me, ethics is not about ethics is about me. Ethics is not about the community as a whole. So if it bothers me, then it's an ethical dilemma.
But the jacket already exists. You're bothered by the jacket getting created. I don't know why you're bothered by the jacket being owned by you. It already exists.
Because I paid money for it. So I obviously value it. And by valuing the jacket, I've obviously gone against my own ethical standards.
Do you cook?
Absolutely.
Do you use Teflon pans?
Nope. Yeah, I do.
Gore-Tex is Teflon?
No. I'm not saying that I'm good or bad in this situation. I'm just asking when's the decision come? And I made the decision to buy the jacket. I made the decision to buy the Teflon tan. I use plastic bags at the grocery store. But my question to you is, when is the point? On these big issues, when is the point where getting down and dirty with some of these things makes it impossible to make any decision whatsoever? Because if we were really I can't remember the name of the guy that went to Alaska. He wrote that book and he lived in a van and he ended up making it for like one winter or something. He left everything behind. If we were really, determined to live perfectly ethically, we would must.
Into the wilderness.
Yeah, John Krakauer.
But
Who was it?
Krakauer wrote the book.
All right. Krakauer went to school with me. All right.
Yeah, he's not the one who did it. He just wrote the book.
Right. But do you really believe that there's anyone sitting in an MBA class who made the decision that they were going to live a perfectly ethical life?
I don't think there's anybody in the whole world except for Jesus, and you know what they did to him.
Is your whole board thing, is that like your values? Is that really an unethical decision?
No,
Or is
that
your
was
values?
just an example.
Like
It's something-
you value the environment.
But what's the difference
So
between?
maybe you shouldn't be owning that jacket. It's not as big of a deal for me, so I want to own the jacket. It doesn't bother me.
I think just wants to keep warm at any cost.
But there's a difference between ethics and values, right? Values are
Like all of the very best of our discussions, what we have been left with are far more questions than answers. I'm watching time. I need to. We've used a lot of Michael's time. I want to first thank Michael for coming and being here. And to do justice to the gift that he's given us, I think we'll continue to talk about this when next we meet. Well, in between, I'm sure. See you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.